I won't pretend to have travelled back to the past to come to you though, because what I'm seeing is brilliant. Look, to start with, press the button again, let's try that. Oh, where am I meant to be pointing this? Anywhere in particular? There we go. No, we're back there. All right. So that was the start. Here was where we live. I really want to start by using a bit of language. Language is important, and we've heard some Kokalish language today. We've heard lots of languages, actually. Actually, I've forgotten with the most traditional language. G'day, mates. Okay, we've got over that. The key here is language is important, and the language we use is important. The difference between the future of we will and we are doing, that language is important. The difference in hearing language as the way we apply our intent to execute the problem. And that language varies with where we live, and as has been very well pointed out, that language varies as to the time zone we're in and where we hear news from. Gathered on the sidebar, I wasn't meant to have any graphs, but this one's really a graph and a map altogether, so therefore it's a graphic. You can see where the population lives. Most of the population's on the northern part of the planet, which means the northern part of the planet is therefore heavier, so down under is really on top and you guys are at the bottom, but that's just gravity. And then there's the aspect of the time zones we're in. And as you can see, the bulk of the population actually lives in the place I came from. I'm in Perth, where there's only 2 million people in the entire state, but I'm in the time zone where more than a third of the population live. And we've got to be able to deal with that in terms of the language we use and the concepts we translate to the Asian sector. And then the other big massive part of that population is in India. And those two time zones and that population are really close together. So that's important in the way that we think about translating the educative messages that we've got to do. But the other great thing about this wee graphic is that it also shows that 2/3 of the world's population lives in solar latitudes, between the 26 parallel latitudes of either part of the hemispheres. And 2/3 of our energy use comes in the daytime. So we're actually already a long way to making use of energy through the daytime in periods that we need it. I think that's where we're travelling. That's how we're travelling. This is how we're travelling at the moment. This one picture I could talk to you about all night, probably for about 4.5 hours, I'd figure. It's a digital message image, because this is how we're getting to the future with our hands, doing that tweeting. Don't forget, tweet hashtag RE Cities, and don't forget, tweet hashtag Trevor Rockstar. I think there's so many elements of what we need to understand in terms of this, how we're getting there, how we got there, how we're getting there, how we will continue to travel forward. And the answer is with the support of the community, and that's why this graphic is so important. And the answer is with the participation of everyone, and that's why this graphic's so important. And the answer is that this is pop culture. This is the language we need to speak. So we actually need to know how to translate this message really thoroughly to get to this future message. And language changes all the time, and ideas change all the time. And it's really important for us in a renewable energy community to get off this silly idea of baseload. Baseload is an old 20th century concept of language in the energy industry, and we need to get past that. And this slide from nature is really confronting for some folk. Okay, but even within science, science is not silent. Science is what we use to gather information and make it understandable. And the idea that sex is actually now being challenged scientifically as not being black and white but being grey shows you how much ideas can change fundamentally. So I think we've got to really think about how we think about the future and how we think about the planet. Because when we carve it up, it looks linear, doesn't it? I think that the challenge with how we think about where we live is important, but it also helps us understand where we get our energy from, which that last slide also gave, because there's a lot of energy in that slide. Okay, here's another slide I can talk to whole day, because this is one of the units of measure that we're using, which is a house. Houses have got energy. Inside a house are energy-consuming devices and devices that give us energy. Kids, people, dogs. There's an Internet of Things inside that's coming, that's connecting all this energy together. There's a box on the front wall that will be really smart, that will allow peer-to-peer trading using blockchain technology to allow these houses to exchange energy, so that when somebody's lights are off and somebody's lights are on, you can move energy within a community, within a household, across a suburb or across a continent. And this is another really important slide, because everything changes, everything evolves. This is the first time we're going from generation 1 of solar, which is when you put a roof on and then you whack a solar panel on top, because it's a special thing called a solar panel and you need a special solar panel installer to do it. It's not just a sparky. And now we're going to stage 2, where it's just a roof plumber that's going to throw it up for you. They're just going to connect it. There might be a sparky around somewhere to connect it in the end. But we've changed from generation 1 to generation 2 of solar. What does generation 3 look like? This thing, because it's old, I really need to get the new one, that's version 6. What does version 7 of this look like? What does version 7 of solar look like? What does version 8 of our new battery storage systems look like? The ability for these things to evolve means we need to be ambitious. And we understand technology evolves all the time, because we demand version 7 of this, we demand version 8 of this, we're expecting it. So we should be also expecting and demanding version 7 and version 8 of solar and wind and batteries and integrated energy management systems and blockchain trading codes that get us to the future. Have I finished with that story? And then we've got transport. We've had some really good stories about transport, so I don't need to say too much about the Tesla in the garage, which we all want, of course, but most of us aren't going to afford. But that's okay, because even with things like airbags started in a BMW back in the 90s, in its first real mass production. And now virtually every new car has an airbag. There's a few models in India that don't quite have airbags yet, but mostly all cars now have airbags. Soon every house will have a solar rooftop, and when we get to this solar rooftop, we're going, oh, that's gone quick. When we get to a solar rooftop, we're going to have to think about how we export energy from a city. I've predicted that the city of Perth, where I come from, which currently has 670 megawatts of solar rooftops amongst 1.5 million people, I expect that that city will be net energy positive by 2025. 2050 is not a target, that's a walk, it's a dawdle. 2040 starts to become challenging. 2030, that's when it starts to get exciting. Let's do this in 13 years. And along the way, we've got to remember to celebrate. I love this Banksy painting. The earth without art is just eh. We need to remember to celebrate. We need to remember that this is for humanity, this is for the community, this is for us in the room, this is for everybody. And if we fail to do it, if we fail to take the journey, then we actually fail. So business as usual is, in my view, failure. Ambition is what we need to get to the future. The future is very plausible because it's already here with us. There's a good phrase that was written only 50 years ago or so, but the future is here, it's just not well distributed yet. That remains true today. And I think, respecting the red light, I'll finish on that note and let you read that.